This week's going to be all about ratios, chapter 4 in your textbook. Make sure that you go through the textbook and you review some of the terminology and verbiage that it gives you and as far as explaining how to work out these types of problems. Also, don't forget about the Evolve website. It's a great resource for you to go on and kind of have some interactive tools. But we're just going to jump right in. Again, I'm working some of the problems that you will come across on the worksheet for Chapter 4 ratios. So the very first section of the textbook, or the first section of that worksheet, is change the following fractions to ratios and make sure you reduce to the lowest terms. So the very first one we have here, number 1, is 9/12, and we want to turn that fraction into a ratio. The first thing that I want to do is reduce that. I know that I can reduce 9/12 to actually 3/4. And now that I have my fraction reduced, I can now easily turn this one into a ratio. My numerator becomes the first number of the ratio, and then the denominator becomes the second. So your answer is the ratio of 3/4. And you'll find on your textbook, if you turn to page 69, the ratio mark means is to, or anytime you have a ratio mark, you say is to. So how we would verbalize this one is 3 is to 4. That's our ratio. The next one we have here, number 2, is 4/6. Again, a really easy one. I'm going to first reduce, and I know that 2 will go into both of those. So that's going to bring me to 2/3. And then again, my numerator becomes the first number in my ratio, and the denominator will become my second one. So my answer is 2 is to 3. And we'll just do another really simple one. Number 3 is 11/22. Again, we're going to reduce it and then simply turn it into a ratio. So I know 11 will go into both of these numbers. So 11 will go into 11 one time, and 11 will go into 22 two times. My numerator, or my 1, becomes my first number. 1 is to 2. Okay, so those are kind of some easy ones. Now let's do one that's maybe a little bit more complicated. I don't know if it really is. This one, let's do number 8. Number 8, it looks complicated. It's going to take a couple more steps or a few more steps, but it's still pretty simple. So the very first thing, I don't like this, how it's kind of presented, so I have to change it. And basically what this problem is saying, it's 5/6 divided by 3 1/3. And the first thing we have to do is take that mixed fraction and turn it into an improper fraction. And remember how to do that. We're going to take our denominator, multiply it by our whole number, and add 1. So 3 times 3 is 9. 9 plus 1 is 10. Okay? And so I end up with 5/6 divided by 10/3. Okay? So we learned when we did fractions that anytime you have, you're supposed to divide fractions, if you just flip that second fraction, then you can multiply straight across. So let's do that. Let's turn this 5/6 times 3/10. And I look here and I know that I can reduce. Before I do my multiplication, I want to reduce really quick. So I know 3 and 6, I can kind of cross some of those out. 3 will go into 3 one time. 3 will go into 6 two times. And I also know that I can kind of reduce my 5 and my 10. So 5 will go into 5 one time. 5 will go into 10 two times. And then essentially I am left with 1/2 times 1/2 when I've done my reduction. Now I'm just going to multiply straight across the board. And I end up with 1/4. So now here's this simple fraction. I kind of had to do a few little steps to get to this simple fraction, and now simply the numerator is going to become the first number in my ratio, and the denominator will become the second number. So this becomes 1 is to 4. and that's your final answer. Okay? So a few little steps, but still not too difficult. Let's do another one just to make sure you've got it. This time we'll do number 9. Number 9 is 1 3/5 divided by 2 7/10. So again, I'm going to kind of rewrite this because I don't like how that is. So essentially what I'm doing is 1, and you don't have to do this step. I'm just showing it to you. And 2 7/10. That's essentially what I'm doing. So the very first thing we have to do again is take our mixed numbers and turn them into an improper fraction. So this time I won't write it out. I'm just going to take 5 times 1 is 5 plus 3 is 8. So this one becomes 8/5. And 10 times 2 is 20 plus 7 is 27. So 27/10. Again, I have a division problem here, and I know when I'm trying to divide fractions, I'm just going to flip that second fraction and then it turns into a multiplication problem. So this is going to turn into 8/5 times 10/27. And I know right off that I'm going to reduce my 10 and my 5. So my 5 becomes 1, my 10 becomes 2, and now I can multiply straight across. So 8 times 2 is 16, and 1 times 27 is 27. So I'm left this little simple fraction. Nothing, it can't divide or it can't be reduced any further. And so I'm going to turn that into my ratio of 16 is to 27. And that's your final answer. Let's do one more just for fun. Let's do, just to make sure you have it, this will be the last one we do, number 11. Just because it's a different type of problem, but I just want to show you how to work it out. So this essentially turns into, when we kind of set it up a different way, this is 14/30 divided by 2. And remember, when you have a whole number, the denominator is always 1, so we can just do it that way. I'm going to then, my math here, I'm then going to swap this division problem. Well, actually, I'm going to reduce first. Okay, so I can see first right off the bat, actually, no, I'm just going to flip it. I can't really do anything yet. So this division problem is I'm going to flip this fraction over here so I can multiply straight across the board. So 14/30 times 1/2. Okay, I'll eventually get caught up with you. Now I can reduce. I know that I can reduce my 14 and my 2. 2 will go into 2 one time. 2 will go into 14 7 times. And now I'll multiply straight across the board. So this equals 7/30. I can't reduce that any further, so I'm left with that simple fraction that now I can simply put into a ratio form. My 7 becomes the first number, and my ratio is to 30. So there's your final answer. So just to kind of go over that one really quickly, just so I didn't confuse you, here's the problem that we started out with, 14/30 divided by 2, and we needed to turn that into a ratio. So we set up our equation like this, 14/30 divided by 2 over 1. We put a 1 over underneath our whole number. To turn this division problem and be able to multiply straight across the board, we flipped this second fraction. So we ended up with 7/30 times 1/2. We could reduce the 14 and the 2. We reduced it, and then we multiplied straight across and ended up with 7/30. And then that simply we were able to take that and turn it into a ratio. Okay? So this is taking fractions and turning it into a ratio. Okay, the next section on the worksheet and in your textbook is taking a decimal fraction and turning it again to a ratio. So here's our decimal, and we're going to take that and turn it into a fraction. Basically, this is another kind of simple process. All you have to do is take your decimal and turn it into a fraction and then reduce. And then we'll just take that simple reduced fraction and take the numerator make it the first number of the ratio, and the denominator will be the second one. So basically, we're going to take this decimal and turn it into a fraction, just like we did last time we got into the fraction form and we were able to turn it to a ratio. Now we have to take a decimal, get it to a fraction, and then turn it to a ratio. Anyway, it's pretty simple. I'll show you. So our number one is 0.896, or 896 thousandths. So we need to turn that into a fraction. Basically what you do is you just add up, or you determine what decimal place you are. So we're in the thousandths place here with this 896. So I'm just going to take this, and this is going to turn into 896 over 1,000. Okay, so I just simply took that decimal and turned it into a fraction, and now I have to reduce it. And I want to show you something really quick. So I don't know off the top of my head what perfect number might go into 896 and 1,000 to reduce it, but I know that 2 will go into both of them. So I'm just going to first reduce it by 2. So I'm going to have 896 divided by 2, and that gives me 448. And I know that 1,000 divided by 2 is 500. Okay, so there I have that. And I can look at that and I can say, you know what, I know I can reduce that. And I know that 2 will go into both those numbers. So I'm just going to reduce it again. So I'll take 448 divided by 2, and I get 224. And I know that 2 will go into 500 250 times. Okay, and then again, I can look at that ratio and say, gosh, you know what? I still haven't divided all the way down. 2 can still go into both of those numbers. So I know that 224 divided by 2 is 112. And I know that 2 will divide into 250 125 times. And now I'm finally in my lowest. I can't divide that any further. So, if you could just use a calculator and trial and error it and punch in a bunch of different numbers to determine what is the highest number that will divide into both 896 and 1,000. Or you can do it this way. I just took 2 and I kept reducing it and reducing it and reducing it until I finally got a number that I had in lowest terms. And so my number is 112 is to 125, and that's the lowest terms. So you can do it that way. I just wanted to show you that way really quick. Number 2, we've got 0.96 or 96 100ths. So we're going to take that and turn it into a fraction. And I'm in the hundredths place here. So I'm just going to take 96 and put that over 100. And I know that I can reduce this. Again, I believe that 2 will go into, well, let's try it just like this. Really simply, I know that 2 will go into both of them. 96 divided by 2 equals 48. This time we'll leave it like this. And I know that 2 will go into 150 times. And look, 48 50ths, I know that that can be reduced again. So 48 divided by 2 is 24. And I know that 2 will go into 50 25 times. So here, finally, I've gotten to my fraction that's in its lowest terms, or it's reduced as far as it will go. And now I can just take this simple fraction and turn it into a ratio. The top number, or the numerator, becomes my first number of the ratio. And my bottom number, or denominator, becomes the second number of my ratio. So both of these were pretty simple ones. We just took our simple decimal and we turned it into a fraction. We determined what place our decimal point was in. This one was in the thousandths place, so we took 896 and put it over 1,000. Then we reduced it, however you want to reduce it. Maybe you can look at that and know exact number that divides into both of them. I didn't know. So we reduced it as far as we could. Same thing with this one. We had 0.96 or 96 100ths. So we took 96 and put it over 100 and then reduced it. The numerator will always become your first number and in the ratio, and the denominator will always be your second number in the ratio. Okay. As always, we have to play a little bit more. So with this one, number 3, we have 0.06, or we have 6/100ths. Again, I'm just going to turn this into a fraction. It's going to be 6/100ths. Okay, so don't let that, there's a 0 in front of that. We're just going to drop it all, and it's going to become 6/100ths. And I believe that we can reduce this. I know that 2 will go into both of them. 2 will go into 6 3 times. 2 will go into 150 times. And now 3/50ths is reduced to its lowest form. So we're just going to take that and simply turn it into our ratio. So we have 3 is to 50. And that's our answer. Okay. Let's do another one. Number 5 is 0.4032, or 4,032 10,000ths. And if you need to, remember I wrote the page number. If you want to go to page 34, there's that table on page 34 that will tell you your tenths place or your decimal point placements, if you couldn't remember that 4 places over is 10,000. So I have this one, so I'm going to turn this into a fraction. It's going to be 4,032 10,000ths. And now I have to reduce that. And I played with this a little bit earlier, so I know that 16 will go into both of them. 16 will go into 4,032 252 times, and 16 will go into 10,625 times. So that's my simple fraction that I'm left with, and now I'm going to turn that fraction into my ratio, and it simply becomes 252 625. Okay? Now let's move on. Next, we're going to do percents to ratios. So here we're going to do number 1. Number 1's a pretty easy one. We're simply going to take 10% and turn it into a ratio. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to drop the percent sign. And you're going to basically take that 10, mark that off, and it's going to be 10, and I'm going to put it over 100. So if I take the percent sign off, I know that this is 10 is a whole number of 100ths. So I'm going to drop that percent sign, put it over 100, simply reduce 1. Our 10 will go into 10 one time, 10 will go into 100 10 times. So I'm left with 1/10. That simple fraction is now going to turn into a decimal. Or that simple fraction is now going to turn into our ratio. 1.10. Okay, so basically what we're doing is we have to drop that percent sign, turn that into a fraction in and of itself, reduce as we need to, and then we've got our ratio. Let's do this one. We've got 33 1/3%. So the very first thing I'm going to do is take this mixed fraction and turn it into an improper fraction. I'm going to take 33 and multiply it by 3, and then add my 1. So I know 33 times 3 is 99, plus 1 is 100. So ultimately, I'm left with 100 thirds. Now I'm going to take 100 thirds, and I'm going to divide it by 100, like I did up there. But instead of dividing, I'm going to flip my second fraction and make it a multiplication problem. So 100 thirds times 100. I'm now going to cancel out my 100s. I know that they'll reduce each other out. And I'm left with 1/3. So that's my simple fraction that I'm now going to turn into a ratio. My Sorry about that. Had a catastrophe. So I was left with 1/3 as my fraction. My 1's going to become my first number in my ratio. My denominator, or my 3, will become my second number. So I am at 1:3. So don't let these mixed fraction percentages or anything like that scare you away. You're simply going to take that mixed fraction, turn it into an improper fraction, and it's all about now dividing. So we're going to take that fraction, divide it by 100. Instead of dividing, we're going to flip the second fraction and multiply straight across. When we do that, our 100s cancel out, and we're left with 1/3. That fraction of 1/3 is going to be our ratio, 1:3. Okay, let's do another one. So this is number 3 on your worksheet, 3/8%. Again, we're going to get rid of that percentage sign, and it's basically going to be 3/8 divided by 100. And instead of doing that, we're actually going to end up with 3/8 times 1/100. I don't believe just by looking at this that I can reduce this fraction. I think they're both reduced. There's nothing to cancel out here. So I'm just going to do my multiplication straight across, and I end up with 3/800. And again, I don't believe that there isn't a number that will go into both 3 and 800. So this is our fraction in lowest terms. And now we're just going to take this, and it's going to become our ratio. So when 3/8% is turned into a ratio, it's 3:800. Let's do this one. So number 8 has a decimal point. Again, we're just going to take that decimal and turn it into a fraction. This decimal, 0.44%, is in the 100th place, or its decimals in the 100th place. So we're going to take that, and it's basically just going to be 44 over 100. Again, here is our fraction that we want to divide by 100. So divided by 100. We're going to flip that second fraction, and it's going to turn out being 44/100 times 1/100. Looking at this, I know that I can reduce this. I know that 4 will go into both 44 and 100. So 4 will go into 44 11 times, and 4 will go into 100 25 times. So now we have 11/100 and 1/25, and I'm going to multiply straight across. I end up with 11, and 100 times 25 is 2,500. So here's my simple fraction that's reduced in its lowest terms, 2,500ths, and I'm just going to take that and turn it into my ratio. So that equals 11 is to 2,500. There's your ratio. Okay, let's do one more. Let's just do one more decimal. So a decimal percent that we're going to turn into a ratio. So with this one, we have 7.8%. We are in the 10th spot here with this 8, this 0.8. We're in the 10th area. So this is going to turn into 78 tenths. And again, we're going to divide that by 100. Now we'll set up our equation so we can multiply 78 tenths times 1 over 100. I know that I can reduce this. I know that 2 will go into 78 and 100. 2 will go into 78. Let's see here. 78 divided by 2. 78 will go in there 39 times. 2 will go into 78 39 times. 2 will go in 150. And now I have everything reduced so I can multiply straight across. So 39 times 1 is 39. And 10 times 50 is 500. I believe that 39/500ths can't be reduced any lower. So this is my simple fraction that I'm just going to flip now into a ratio. 39/500ths is your answer. Okay? All right, now let's move on. Okay, when we're turning ratios into fractions, again, if you have just a simple ratio, all you have to do is take the first number, make it your numerator, take the second number, make it your denominator, and then reduce to lowest terms. So with this one, this is just going to turn into 4/64ths. And I know that I can reduce that. I know 4 will go into both of those numbers. So 4 will go into 4 one time, and 4 will go into 64 times. And so there's your final answer. So I just simply took my ratio and I turned it into a fraction and reduced it. Same thing with number 2. I have 4:800. That 4 is going to become my numerator. 800 will become my denominator. And I can reduce this. I believe that 4 will go into 800. Yep. So reduce it to 1/200ths. And now I take that fraction, turn it into a ratio. So 1:200. My answer. Okay, so those were simple. Simple ratio, turn into a fraction, reduce it. Now with this ratio, number 4 from your worksheet, we have 2 fractions that is our ratio. So we're going to have to do a little bit of math here. Basically what we are going to do is we're going to take those fractions and we're going to divide them into each other. So this is going to, I like to set up my equation. It's going to be 3/8 divided by 1/4. And we're going to actually then flip the 1/4, and it's going to become a multiplication problem. 3/8 times 4/1. I now know that I can, did I do that right? Yes, I did. So now I know that I can reduce my 4 and my 8. I know that 4 will go into both of them. And now I'm just going to do my multiplication. So 3 times 1 is 3. 2 times 1 is 2. And that's my simple fraction that I'm now going to turn into my ratio. So actually, no, I have to pause for a second. I'm left with an improper fraction. Remember when you have a numerator that's taller or that's larger than a denominator, it's an improper fraction. So let's take this improper fraction and turn it into a proper fraction, and then we'll be done. So you might remember, in order to do that, you have to divide, and we're going to take 3 and we're divide it by 2. So we'll set this up like so. I know that 2 will go into 3 one time. 1 times 2 is 2. All right, so now I'm left with this. So my 2 becomes my whole number. No, sorry, my 1 up here. My 1 up here becomes my whole number. And 1, my denominator doesn't change. It stays at 2. So my answer is, I'll put it up here, 1 1/2. Okay, so let me review this one with you. So this is a problem that we started out with, number 4 from your workbook. 3/8 is to 1/4. So we start out with a ratio of 2 fractions. What we need to do is divide one fraction by the other. So we set up our equation like this, 3/8 divided by 1/4. Like we do any fraction, when we're dividing it, we're going to flip that second fraction and we're going to multiply then across. So our new fraction became 3/8 times 4/1. We were then able to reduce. Our 4 went into 4 one time. Our 4 went into this 8 2 times. And then we multiplied straight across. So 3 times 1 is 3. 2 times 1 is 2. So we ended up with 3 halves. Well, that's an improper fraction, so we had to turn it into a mixed fraction. And we did that by taking 2 and dividing it into 3, so taking your denominator and dividing it into your numerator. So 2 into 3, and we were left with this 1, this 2, and this 1. This 1 up here becomes your whole number. Your denominator never changes. And the product that we were left over with was our 1. So the answer here, the ratio of 3/8 is to 1/4. When you turn that into a fraction, it's 1 1/2. Let's do another one. Okay, so here we have 8/12 is to 2/3. So we have 2 fractions as our ratio. So we're just going to divide them by each other. So let's set that up. It'll be 8/12 divided by 2/3. We're going to take this fraction and flip it. 8/12 times 3 halves. So we flipped that second fraction so we can turn our division problem into a multiplication problem. And now we're going to reduce, and we can reduce a couple of places here. We can reduce on both sides. I know that 3 will go into 3 one time, and 3 will go into 12 4 times. And I know that 2 will go into 2 one time, and 2 will go into 8 4 times. So we're left with 4 times 1 equals 4. And down here we have 4 times 1 equals... Nope, I did that wrong. Sorry. Pause this till I figure it out. Okay, nope, never mind. I was right. I just need to multiply across. So this was 4 times 1 is 4, and then 4 times 1 is 4 down here. So 4 over 4 is essentially just 4. So, or actually 4 over 4 is essentially just 1. So your answer is actually ends up just being a whole number. When you take 8/12, the ratio of 8/12 is to 2/3, and you turn it into a fraction, you simply end up with 1. So let me go over that with you, review this one again. Hopefully I'm not confusing you more than I'm helping you. So this was our original problem, 8/12 is to 2/3. We took that and basically we know that we're going to divide those fractions into each other. So we set up our equation like this, 8/12 divided by 2/3. We're going to take this division of fractions, flip our second fraction, and then multiply across the board. So we ended up, this is kind of messy, so I'll rewrite it for you. We ended up with 8/12 times 3 halves. And now we knew that we could reduce this. Over on, cross-sectionally reducing. I know that 3 will go into 3 one time, and 3 will go into 12 4 times. Now reducing this direction, I know that 2 will go into 2 one time, and 2 will go into 8 4 times. So now I'm going to multiply across, just like we did up here. 4 times 1 was 4, and 4 times 1 was 4. So we ended up with 4 over 4, which essentially you can reduce that down, right? 4 will go into 4 one time, and so we're left with 1, a whole number of 1. Okay, let's do this one down here. 2 1/2 is to 7 1/2. Flip my page so I can make sure I'm doing it right. Okay, so the very first thing we need to do is get this mixed number and turn it into an improper fraction. So again, I'm not going to write it out all the way, but I'm going to take my whole number. I'm going to take my whole number, and multiply it by my denominator, and then add my numerator. So 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, so 5 halves. And same thing over here, take my whole number, multiply it by the denominator, add my numerator. So 7 times 2 is 14, plus 1 is 15. Okay, so now I'm here with this ratio. And just like in the past, I'm going to take this ratio and basically end up dividing, set it up as a division problem. So it'll be 5 halves divided by 15 halves. I know that I'm going to now flip that second fraction and turn it into a multiplication problem. So it ends up with 5 halves times 2 over 15. And now I'm going to reduce where I can. So I know that these 2's will reduce out. So they're both going to turn into 1. And I know that 5 will go into 15. So 5 will go into 5 one time, and 5 will go into 15 3 times. And now I'm just going to multiply across. So 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 3 is 3. And I'm left with 1/3. So that's taking this ratio and turning it into a fraction of 1/3. All right, let's do 2 more ratios to fractions. So we can practice with it with working with decimals. So here we have 0.68 or 68/100ths is to 44/100ths or 0.44. So again, we're just going to take this simple decimal and we're going to turn it into a fraction and then do exactly what we just got done doing. So this is essentially going to turn into 68/100ths divided by 44/100ths. Okay? So then we are going to take this division of fraction. This 44/100ths is going to get flipped. 68/100ths times 100 over 44. And now we're going to reduce where we can. So the 100s are immediately going to cancel each other out. They'll go into each other, so we're left with 1 there. And then I believe that 4 will go into both 68 and 44. 4 will go into 44 11 times. 4 will go into 68 17 times. And now I'm just going to multiply across. So 17 times 1 is 17. 1 times 11 is 11. So there's my fraction that I'm left with, 17 over 11. It's an improper fraction. So I have to take that improper fraction and turn it into a mixed number. So I do that by 11 into 17. I know that 11 will go into 17 one time. 1 times 11 is 11. Do my math. And essentially I am left with 1 and 6 elevenths. Okay, so taking this ratio of 0.68 is to 0.44, turning those both into fractions. Remember, we just practiced a little bit ago taking decimals and turning them into making them into a fraction. So these were both in the hundredths place. So we took 68 over 100 divided by 44 over 100. Flip that second fraction so we could have a multiplication, easy multiplication. Did our reduction as we needed to and ended up with 17 over 11. That improper fraction, we did a little tweaking and we turned it into a mixed number. Okay, last one, we'll do number 12. 1.64 is to 2.54. So again, we're just going to take these numbers. Both of these are in the 100th decimal place or the 100th place. So it's essentially going to be 164 over 100 254 over 100. So when we take that decimal, we're just going to basically take that decimal and turn it into a fraction. So this is what we're left with. We know that we want to divide these. We flip that second fraction, we can then multiply. So 1/64/100th times 100 over 254. Now I'm going to reduce. My 100s cancel out. And I believe just maybe 2. 164 divided by 2 equals 82. Divided by 2 equals, 127. So now I'll just multiply. I've reduced. I knew 2 went into 164 and 254 both. 2 will go into 164 82 times. 2 will go into 254 127 times. Now I'm just going to multiply across. So 82 times 1 is 82. And 1 times 127 is 127. So, and I can't reduce that any further, so I'm left with this fraction. So here's your final answer. So this ratio, 1.64, is to 2.54. When we did our little tweaking in our math, we ended up with this fraction, 82 over 127. So that's ratios to fractions. Next, we're going to do ratios to decimals. Okay, again, going back to the worksheet, we're moving on to the next section, and we're going to have ratios, turning those ratios into decimals. So here with number 1, we have 7 is to 14. Basically, what we have to do is we're just going to divide the first number by the second number. Use your calculator, okay? Just take 7 divided by 14, and that gives me 0.5. That simple. You could set it up. Work it up. Anyway, just use your calculator. It's very simple. So I took 7 divided by 14, and it gave me 0.5. That's all I did. I divided my first number by my second number. So on number 2, let's take 3, divide it by 8, and I end up with 3 divided by 8, and I end up with 0.375 as my answer. Okay? So when you just have a ratio, a simple ratio with whole numbers, all you have to do is just take your first number and divide it by the second one, and that's going to give you a decimal point. That's turning that ratio into a decimal. Now, of course, there has to be, it can't always be that easy. So with this one, we have 2 fractions for our ratio. The very first thing that we want to do is just take these fractions and turn them into decimals. And simply by doing that, I'm going to take the numerator and divide it by the denominator. So I'm going to take 5 divided by 8 equals, and this gives me 0.625. And then I'm going to take 1 divided by 10, and that's going to give me 0.1. So now I have my simple ratio with decimal points. I have a simple ratio. And so again, I'm going to divide my first number by my second number. So I'm going to take 0.625 divided by 0.1, and it gives me 6.25 as my final answer. Okay? So again, here was our problem. We started out with 2 fractions. We took those fractions and we immediately just turned them into decimals. And we did that by dividing the numerator by the denominator. So we took 5 divided by 8 and we got 0.625, and then we took 1 divided by 10 and got 0.1. So now we were with a simple ratio, and we simply divided the first number by the second number with our calculator. You don't have to show your work or do that by hand. Just use your calculator, and we ended up with 6.25. Okay, let's do another one of these. Just Let's do number 12 simply because it has a mixed number that we're going to have to just simply reduce it. Or I'm sorry, turn our mixed fraction into an improper fraction, okay? So in order to do that, we're going to take our whole number and multiply it by our denominator. 1 times 5 is 5. Add our numerator is 7. So we end up with 7/5 is to 12/30. Okay? So now we're left with that. Again, we're going to turn these fractions into decimals. And we're going to do that by taking 7 divided by 5. And that ends up with 1.4. Yeah, 1.5. And then we're going to take 12 divided by 30. And that gives me 0.4. Okay, so this is now our new ratio with decimals. So we was able to get rid of that fraction, turn those fractions into decimals. So our new ratio is 1.4 is to 0.4. And now we're going to have to divide the first number by the second number. So 1.4 divided by 0.4 is 3.5. And that's your final answer. So when we, again, had a fraction, we just took that fraction and we ended up turning it into a decimal. This one, we had to turn this mixed number into an improper fraction. We did the simple math. We ended up with 7/5 is to 12/30. In order to get these fractions into a decimal, we simply divided the numerator by the denominator. So 7 divided by 5 was 1.4. 12 divided by 30 was 0.4. And then we divided the first number by the second number. So if you set up your equation, it would have looked like this, 0.4 into 1.4, or 1.4 divided by 0.4. Basically, again, divide the first number by the second number. Use your calculator. Do not do that by hand. And we ended up with 3.5. Okay? The very last thing we'll do, I'll get us set up for ratios and percents. Okay, with ratios and percents, you can kind of work these two different ways. The book shows you how to work it as a decimal point or how to work it as a fraction. For whatever reason, I kind of like to work with decimals more than fractions, so I'll show you how to do it by working with decimals. So the first one that we'll work with from the worksheet on the last section of the worksheet is 2 is to 4, and we're going to turn this ratio and turn it into a percent. So the very first thing we have to do is kind of turn this ratio into a decimal point. And I'm going to do that by dividing my first number into my second number. So 2 divided by 4, I did that, pushed the wrong button. 2 divided by 4 is 0.5. So that's 0.5. Now, to turn this 0.5, I have to multiply that by 100. You know, percents are always in 100s. So I'm going to take 0.5, multiply by 100, and that's going to give me 50%. Don't forget to label it with your percentage sign. So basically all I did, my ratio was 2 is to 4. I ended up taking that ratio and turning it into a decimal by dividing the first number by the second number. So 2 divided by 4 was 0.5. To now take that 0.5 and make it into a percentage, I had to multiply it by 100, and I got 50%. Let's do the next one. Number 2, we have 7 is to 231. So again, I like to work with decimals. So I'm going to turn this into a decimal by dividing my first number by my second number. So 7 divided by 231, it's a weird number. It's 0.0303. I'll just go out that far. So I end up, let's make sure I'm right, 7 divided by 231 equals, 0.0303 is how far I'll go out with that one. So I'm left with this nice, simple, little decimal point that now all I want to do is multiply that by 100. And when I do times 100, I get 3.0303. I don't care. I won't count it wrong if you drop off this one and you just go to the hundredths place. The book doesn't specify, so I would probably just put 0.03%. But if you carried it all the way out, that would be fine. Wow. So it's just completely up to you. But don't forget your percentage sign. So again, with this one, we took this ratio of 7 is to 231. We took this ratio, and the very first thing we did is turn it into just a decimal point by dividing the first number by the second number. When we divided 7 by 231, we ended up with 0.0303. To get that into a percentage, we multiplied it by 100 and ended up with 0.03% or 0.0303%. All right, let's do another one. Okay, so with this one, again, we're just working with whole numbers here, or mixed numbers, mixed fraction numbers. So we want to take that and turn it into an improper fraction. We do that by multiplying the denominator by the whole number and adding 1. So 4 times 1 is 1, plus 1 is 5. So this turns into 5/4. And over here, we have 3 times 8, which is 24, and then we're going to add 3. 24 plus 3 is 27. So we have 27/8. So here's our ratio. And basically, we have a fraction ratio here. We want to take our fraction and we want to turn it into a decimal point. We're going to do that by taking 5 divided by 4, or taking our numerator and dividing it by our denominator. So 5 divided by 4 equals 1.25. And this one, 27 divided by 8, is 3.375. So there is our ratio now. We took that fraction and we turned it into a decimal ratio. And now we're simply going to divide the first number by the second number. So 1.25 divided by 3.375 gives me 0.3703. I'll take it out that far. And then I'm going to take that. That's my decimal, but I want a percentage. So I have to take that and multiply it by 100. And I end up with 37.037% as my final answer. Okay? So very first thing you remember, you have to take that mixed number, mixed with fraction number, and turn it into an improper fraction by multiplying your denominator times your whole number plus your numerator. We ended up with 5/4 is to 27/8. We turned that fraction, those fractions, into decimals by dividing the numerator by the denominator. So 5 divided by 4 was 1.25. 27 divided by 8 was 3.375. We then divided our first number by our second number and got 0.3703. And to get our percentage, we multiplied that number by 100 and got 37.037%. One more. So number 7 is, we already have decimals here. So with number 7, let me flip my page here. We've got 0.15 is to 0.6. So up here, we were working so hard to get it to a decimal. Here, the decimal's given to us. So all we want to do is divide our first number by our second number. So we're going to take 0.15 divided by 0.6, and it gives me, when I divide that, it gives me 0.25. I'm now going to take that and turn it into a percentage by multiplying it by 100. And not right, 0.25 times 100. And it gives me 25% as my final answer. So that one was nice and simple. We didn't have to do anything. They already gave us our decimal, so all we had to do was take our first number and divide it by the second number. And then that answer, that 0.25, we multiplied it by 100 so we could get our percentage of 25%. We'll do one more because there's one that's kind of different from the other ones. We're already dealing with a whole number here, which is great. That side of the ratio is done for us. So all we have to do is get this fraction and turn it into a decimal. So what I'm going to do is take 3 divided by 16, and this ends up being 4 is to 0.1875. So this is my new ratio. In order to get it down further, I'm going to take my first number and divide it by my second number. So it's going to be 4 divided by 0.18. 4 divided by, and that gives me 21.33. I'm then going to take that number and multiply it by 100 so I can get my percentage, and I end up with a big number, 2133.33%. Okay, so this was my original problem. I already had a whole number over here. I just needed to get rid of this fraction. And I turned it into a decimal by taking 3 and dividing it by 16. So this was my new one. I had 4 is to 0.1875. To get that into a single decimal, I divided my first number by my second number, and I ended up with 21.33. And then to get my percentage, I multiplied that by 100 and ended up with 2,133.33%. And that would be my final answer. And again, I would probably just drop that off at the 100s place. So anyway, that is ratios in a nutshell. Like I said at the beginning, make sure you also go on Evolve and do some of their practice tests and some of their exercises that they have. Work these problems out. Work on your worksheet that's due on Friday. And let me know if you have any questions.